I'm sure when you read the title, you're thinking, did this channel lose its edge? How can Ben & Jerry's possibly be involved in some kind of end-time sign? Ben & Jerry's is not in the Bible. And will the USA actually criminalize Ben & Jerry's for making a decision to stop selling ice cream in contested Israeli settlements? Well, Ben & Jerry's Israel pullout decision may be much more significant than what you think. It may prove to have been a pivotal moment in the campaign against Israel that will escalate in the end times. Now, Ben & Jerry's is already facing significant blowback from the Israeli government, rabbinical organizations, and possibly even USA criminal charges. Yes, believe that or not. Christians are considering boycotts. That's understandable. And this channel's advisory board has decided to personally stop purchasing Ben & Jerry's. We just felt there was no reason to economically support someone who opposes Israel. So spiritual battlegrounds are being drawn. But other than a single company pulling out of Israel for political reasons, which seems to happen all the time, what deeper prophetic meaning might be attached to this economic move? Our community needs to know, and that's why we're talking about this today, and we're starting right now. James Zogby, president of the Arab American Institute in Washington, D.C., had this to say, quote, Ben & Jerry's made a very risky decision. Businesses don't usually do stuff like that. This was a big deal, end of quote. Yes, this is a big deal. Will Ben & Jerry's be able to withstand the pressure? And more importantly, if they do, will other companies join Ben & Jerry's? That is the real question, not just Ben & Jerry's. You see, in the end times, all nations will join together against Israel. In Zechariah we learn, on that day I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the peoples. All who lift it will surely hurt themselves, and all the nations of the earth will gather against it. Now, you don't have to tell us that there is a huge distance from one company pulling out of Israel in protest to all the nations of the whole world gathering against it militarily. However, big movements like a military move against Israel start small, even if it's only ice cream. This was a calculated move by Ben & Jerry's. The people behind the scenes pushing Ben & Jerry's to do this knew that they would result in international controversy and even criminal action. Yes, you heard me correctly. There are actually criminal consequences to this pullout. Let's see what the Israeli leaders have to say. Yair Lapid, Israel's brand new foreign minister, made this statement, quote, Ben & Jerry's decision represents shameful surrender to anti-Semitism, to BDS, and to all that is wrong with the anti-Israel, anti-Jewish discourse. We will not be silent. Over 30 U.S. states in the United States have passed anti-BDS legislation in recent years. Now, BDS, if you don't know, means boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Lapid continued, I plan on asking each of them to enforce these laws against Ben & Jerry's. They will not treat the state of Israel like this without a response. Gilead Erdan, Israel's ambassador to the U.S. and the United Nations, followed this up by saying, we view this decision very severely, as it is the de facto adoption of anti-Semitic practices and the advancement of the delegitimization of the Jewish state and the dehumanization of the Jewish people. End of quote. Israel is not taking this lightly because, as Erdogan mentions, it is the first step in delegitimizing the Jewish state and the Jewish people, eventually leading to genocide. So ice cream can be a sign of the end times. And we know what Erdogan mentions is exactly what happens in the end times. Jesus said, for there will be great distress upon the earth and wrath against this people. They will fall by the edge of the sword and be led captive among all the nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So, based on these statements, we can see that the nation of Israel knows that the United States have passed a number of anti-boycott laws, and they're trying to use these laws to force Ben and Jerry's to go back on their decision. But if Israel fails in criminalizing Ben and Jerry's actions, that will likely set a precedent, and other corporations will likely follow suit, and Israel will suffer not only economically, that's important, but it's not the big picture, but also likely in the world's view of Israel. As we stated previously, this may only be the first step in an economic and political attack on Israel. But why Ben and Jerry's? I mean, of all the companies in the world, Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield are the co-founders and are already known for promoting progressive social causes. But what makes this kind of ironic is both were born to families with Jewish roots, although neither appears to be practicing their Judaism. As the Apostle Paul says, "For no one is a Jew who is merely one outwardly, nor is circumcision outward and physical. But a Jew is one inwardly, and circumcision is a matter of the heart, by the Spirit." So choosing Ben and Jerry's, again, was calculated by those opposed to Israel to divide Jews outside of Israel from the nation, to make it appear cool to reject the nation state, even if you're Jewish. So why now? This channel and many other international commentators believe this is a test to see if the world sentiment has turned progressive enough that the international community can begin to turn on Israel. Again, we're seeing this as a first step. In 2019, the online accommodation service Airbnb tried the same tactic. They tried to delist properties in the Israeli settlements, but came under fierce legal and political pressure, like we're starting to see now, and reversed its decision. In 2019, the time wasn't right yet. But now, 2 years later, they're trying to see if the media propaganda, the change in governments in the USA will make it the right time. So these ice cream wars are not trivial. This divestiture is about a lot more than some Israelis not being able to buy Cherry Garcia ice cream. We strongly suggest that our community watch how this BDS attempt progresses, as it will likely be a forerunner of what is to come. Now, at this point, many of you may be asking, hasn't God chosen to defend Israel at all costs? Aren't there Israel protection Bible verses in the scriptures? Well, here are some questions to think about. Does God defend the nation or the people? And does he eventually remove the hedge he has placed and allow the defeat of the nation and genocide of its people? These are questions worthy of another video. If this video has already been released, click right here to keep watching. If not, click right here to learn about the position of the new Israeli Prime Minister on the Temple Mount and in his own words. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.